The Veteran Cricketer by H.G. Wells. Narrated by Gary Appleton. My old cricketer was seized, he says, some score of years ago now, by sciatica, clutched indeed about the loins thereby, and forcibly withdrawn from the practice of the art. Since when a certain predisposition to a corpulent habit has lacked its natural check of exercise, and a broadness almost Dutch has won upon him. Were it not for this, which renders his contours and his receding aspect unseemly, he would be indeed a venerable-looking person, having a profile worthy of a patriarch, tinged though it may be with an unpatriarchal jollity and a close curly beard like that of King David. He lives by himself in a small cottage outside the village, hating women with an unaccountable detestation, and apparently earns a precarious livelihood, and certainly the sincere aversion of the countryside, by umpiring in matches and playing whist and nap with such as will not be so discreet and economical as to bow before his superior merit. His neighbours do not like him, because he will not take their cricket or their whist seriously, because he will persist in offering counsel and the stimulus of his gift of satire. All whist than his, he avers, is bumble puppy. His umpiring is pedagogic in tone. He fails to see the contest in the game. To him, who has heard his thousands roar as the bales of the best of all England went spinning, these village matches are mere puerile exercises to be corrected. His corrections, too, are Olympian, done, as it were, in red ink, vivid, and without respect of persons. Particularly, he jibes. He never uses vulgar bad language himself, but has a singular power of engendering it in others. He has a word, Gabby, which he will sometimes enlarge to stupid Gabby, the which, flung neatly into a man who has just missed a catch, will fill the same with a whirl of furious curses difficult to restrain. And, if perchance one should escape, my ancient cricketer will be as startled as Cadmus at the crop he has sown. And not only startled, but pained at human wickedness and the follies of a new generation. "Why can't you play without swearing, Master Gibbs?" he will say, catching the whispered hope 20 yards away and proclaiming it to a censorious world. And so Gibbs, our grocer and draper, and one made much of by the vicar, is shamed before the whole parish, and damned even as he desired. To our vicar, a well-meaning, earnest, and extremely nervous man, he displays a methodical antagonism. Our vicar is the worst of all possible rural vicars, unripe, a glaring modern, no classical scholar, no lover of nature, offensively young and yet not youthful, an indecent politician. He was meant to labour amid urban myriads, to deal with social evils, home rule, the woman question, and the reunion of Christendom, attend conferences, and go with the Weltgeist, damn him, wherever the Weltgeist is going. He presents you jerkily, a tall, lean man of aesthetic visage and ample garments, a soul clothed not so much in a fleshy body as in black flaps that ever trail behind its energy. Where they made him, heaven knows. No university owns him. It may be he is a renegade, dissenting minister, neither good church nor wholesome nonconformity. Him my cricketer regards with malignant respect he shows by a punctilious touching of his hat brim directed to the sacred office. All the rest is malignity, and aimed at the man that fills it. They come into contact on the cricket field and on the committee of our reading room. For our vicar, in spite of a tendency to myopia, conceives it is his duty to encourage cricket by his participation. Duty? To encourage cricket? So figure the scene to yourself. The sunlit green, and a match in progress. The ball has just snipped a stump askew. My ancient, leaning on a stout cabbage stick, and with the light overcoat that is sacred to umpires upon his arm. "Out, Billy Duggan," says he, and adds ex cathedra, and "one you ought to ha hit for 4. Then appears our vicar in semi-cannicles, worn to keep up his position, or some such folly, nervous about the adjustment of his hat and his eyeglasses. He approaches the pitch, smiling the while to show his purely genial import and to anticipate and explain any amateurish touches. He reaches the wicket and poses himself as the convenient book he has studied directs. "You'll be caught, Master Shackleford, if you keep your shoulder up like that," says the umpire. "Yep, that's worse," forgetting himself in a zeal for attitude, and then a voice cries, "Play!" The vicar swipes wildly, cuts the ball for 2, and returns to his wicket breathless but triumphant. Next comes a bye, and then over. The misguided cleric, ever pursuing a theory of foolish condensation to his betters at the game, and to show there is no offence at the yaps, takes the opportunity, although panting, of asking my ancient if his chicks, late threatened with staggers, are doing well. What would he think if my cricketer retaliated by asking, in the pause before the sermon, how the vicarage pony took his last bolus? The two men do not understand one another. My cricketer waves the hens aside and revenges himself, touching his hat at intervals by some offensively obvious remarks as to a mere beginner about playing with a straight bat. And the field sniggers none too furtively. I sympathise with his malice. Cricket is an altogether too sacred thing to him to be tampered with on merely religious grounds. However, our vicar gets himself caught at the first opportunity, and so being removed from my veterans' immediate environment, to their common satisfaction, the due ritual of the great game is resumed. My ancient cricketer abounds in reminiscence of the glorious days that have gone for ever. He can still recall the last echoes of the throwing controversy that agitated Nyren when overarm bowling began. And though he never played himself in a beaver hat, he can, he says, recollect seeing matches so played. In those days, everyone wore tall hats. The policeman, the milkman, workmen of all sorts. Some people, I fancy, must have bathed in them and gone to bed wearing them. He recalls the titans of that and the previous age, and particularly delights in the legend of Noah Man, who held it a light thing to walk 20 miles from North Chapel to Hamilton to practice every Tuesday afternoon and wander back after dark. He himself, as a stripling, would run a matter of 4 miles after a day's work in the garden where he was employed to attend an hour's practice over the downs before the twilight made the bulls invisible. And afterwards came Teutonic revelry or wanderings under the summer starlight, as the mood might take him, for there was a vein of silent poetry in the youth of this man. He hates your modern billiard table pitch and a battling of dexterous snickery. He likes character in a game. Gigantic hitting forward, bowler-planned leg catches, a cunning obliquity in a wicket that would send the balls mysteriously askew. But dramatic breaks are now a thing unknown in trade cricket. One legend of his, I doubt. He avers that one at Brighton, in a match between Surrey and Sussex, he saw 7 wickets bowled by some such aid in 2 successive overs. I have never been able to verify this. I believe that, as a matter of fact, the thing has never occurred, but he tells it often in a fine crescendo of surprise, and the refrain, "Out he came!" His first beginning is a cheerful anecdote of a crew of young gentlemen from Cambridge staying at the big house, and a challenge to the rustic talent of me and Billy Hall, who played a bit at that time, of me and Billy Hall winning the pitch and going in first, of a memorable, if uncivil, stand at the wickets through a long, hot afternoon, and a number of young gentlemen from Cambridge painfully discovering local talent by exhaustive fielding in the park, a duty they honourably discharged. I am fond of my old cricketer, in spite of a certain mendacious and malign element in him. His yarns of gallant stands and unexpected turns of fortune, of memorable hits and eccentric umpiring, all being tending sometimes incredibly to his glory, are full of the flavour of days well spent, of bright mornings of play, sunlit sprawlings beside the score tent, warmth, the flavour of bitten grass stems, and the odour of crushed turf. One seems to hear the clapping hands of village ancients and their ululations of delight. One thinks of stone jars with cool drink swishing therein, of shouting victories and memorable defeats of 11 men in a drag, and tuneful and altogether glorious homecomings by the light of the moon. His were the Olympian days of the sport, when noble squires were its patrons, and every village a home and nursery of stalwart cricketers, before the epoch of special trains, gate money, star 11s, and the tumultuous gathering of idle cads to jabber at a game they cannot play.